We're just gonna probably wait maybe a little bit less than a minute, let everybody get settled, and then we'll get started.
I guess that's the speaker.
I'm gonna ask that everybody please mute your mics. And you are invited to turn
Don't
on
touch
your
anything.
cameras.
What does it say?
Go look where you pop up.
Talking? Somebody's talking.
No.
I was talking, but I'm asking everybody else to mute their mics for now. And then we'll get started in a little bit. Just letting everybody get settled and connected into the Zoom meeting. Looks like we got a couple guys still connecting to the audio. Okay, I got 6:02. Let's get started. We're gonna kick the meeting off with a pule from Ulu from the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands. So at this time, I'd like to ask Ulu to give us a pule.
Aloha and welcome everyone. On behalf of the Department of Hawaiian Home Lands, it's an honor to present to you the pule. At this time, can we bow our heads in prayer? E puli kako. Our dear, kind, and gracious Heavenly Father, we are so very humbled and thankful for the gathering of all of our Zoom followers and our beneficiaries and our consultants, the Department of Hawaiian Homeland and its leadership by William Isla and Tyler Gomes, along with Acting Planning Manager Andrew Choi and our consultants. We thank our beneficiaries for the opportunity to provide this evening's general plan to them. We also ask for humbleness, caring, sharing with kind words spoken, and many wonderful ideas to be shared. These things we are so humble and grateful, and at the end of the day, we humbly ask to take anyone who has traveled home safely. And these things we so humbly pray for in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Ulu. That was great. Aloha, everybody, and welcome. This is round 2, part 2 of our beneficiary consultation for the DHHL General Plan update. I am Jared Chang from SSFM
I'm on a Zoom meeting right now. Bye.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna have to mute. Good, very good. I will be the meeting facilitator for tonight. One quick note before we begin: this meeting is being recorded, the video plus the chat, and it'll be posted later to our general plan website. So let's get started. Tonight's agenda. Hold on one sec. We're going to introduce ourselves and the DHHL team. We'll cover some housekeeping items. That'll be followed by a quick recap of where we are at in the overall general plan update process and what has been completed to date. Then we're going to move right into tonight's presentation and discussion on policy topics for housing and food production. Then we'll close with a quick wrap up and discussion of next steps. Okay, from the DHHL Planning Office team, we have Andrew Choi. He's the Acting Planning Program Manager. You can see him waving his hand. I don't know if Julie's here, but he's supported by Julianne Cachola. She's also a planner with that office. I'm Jared Chang, and we are joined tonight from our team at SSFM by Melissa May. She's our project manager and also a senior planner. We've got Malachi Krishak and Matt Fernandez, 2 other planners with us, and we run out the team for DHHL's general plan update. Malachi and Matt will be handling the notes and managing the chat. They'll be posting things into the chat, so keep your chat box open if you can. Okay, so our Kuleana for this meeting, pretty simple. Being respectful of others and show aloha by not interrupting and keeping yourself muted when others are speaking. When you do want to speak, please raise your hand using the Zoom function or in your video and wait for me to call on you before you unmute yourself. Or you can type your questions into the chat. There may be times when we must agree to disagree. So let's all keep that in mind, and that others may have a different perspective or opinion. And then finally, we all are encouraged to keep an open mind tonight and be open to new ideas and new information shared. Quick tutorial on how to use Zoom. So starting on the left side, you'll see a microphone icon. That's how you mute and unmute yourself. To the right of that is your video icon. Turn your video on and off. We encourage everyone to turn your videos on if possible. In the center of the screen is the chat button. Click on that to open the chat, and you might want to leave that open if you can through the meeting. To the right of that is the reactions button. That's where you'll find the raise your hand feature. And just want to remind everybody, after you've spoken, to lower your hand, otherwise they'll keep calling on you. Okay, tonight we're going to be using Mentimeter basically just to check everyone in. So we're going to be asking for your name, email, beneficiary status, and your location. We'd like to ask everyone right now, if you are able, to go to menti.com, and one of our team members will post the Menti link into the chat. That'll make it a little easier to get to it. Enter the code on the screen, 15590129, and then you'll get to the first set of questions, which basically helps us keep track of who's attending these meetings and where people are calling in from. So we're just gonna give everyone a quick, maybe 30 seconds to get into Menti, put in the code, answer the few questions, and then we'll show a cloud. We'll get the response. We'll show the responses that we're getting. So why don't we go to the Menti already? All right, so you should see on your screen, we got 5 lessees already signed in, 6 now. Very good. Why don't we try the next screen and see where everybody's calling in from. Kaumana, Homestead, Kalavahine, Kapole, Kailapa, Kanahili. Okay, great.
Wait a minute.
Oh, we need to please post the code into the chat too, Matt. Thank you. And we're gonna move on, but please go ahead and complete the Menti. Yeah, 15590129 is the code. Okay, we got 7. Oh, somebody from Maui, great. Oh, Molokai.
I'm sorry, what's the code again? Oh.
On the screen, 15590129. And it should also be in the chat.
Menti.com.
Okay. And if you guys are having trouble logging on to Menti, go ahead and put it into the chat where you're calling in from.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, let's move on. So purpose for tonight's meeting, basically to give you an update on the general plan process. Then we're going to dive right into exploring existing conditions, land use designations, and future policies on housing and food production. And the most important purpose for tonight's meeting is for us to listen to you and to get your input on all the stuff that we're presenting tonight. Okay, let's move into an update on where we are in the process. So in this first slide, we have a graphic showing the different plans that make up the DHHL planning system. At the very top in tier 1 is a general plan, which serves as a 20-year guiding document that identifies the vision, long-term goals, and priorities for DHHL and the Hawaiian Homes Commission. As represented in this graphic here, the general plan really sets the policy direction for all of DHHL's plans, as well as funding, legislative, and land use priorities. And as part of the general plan update process, we are also building into it an evaluation program to update and monitor the success of the plan against the vision. So main takeaway, we just want to emphasize that the general plan sets the stage for all other plans, and this is actually a really big opportunity to get beneficiary input into a plan that only comes around every 20 years. Okay. what's going into the general plan update? So quite simply, it's the vision and policies to guide Hawaiian Homelands and DHHL programs, policies, and plans for the next 20 years. The update must also include minimum requirements that are set forth in the Hawaii Administrative Rules, Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 55. I have another slide after this that shows those. The plan basically we want to be able to have innovative and pragmatic plans and policies to be used by DHHL staff, the Hawaiian Homes Commission, beneficiaries, and decision makers. And finally, we want to be able to identify the measures that will be used to measure success and assess the progress towards the vision and goals that will be set in the plan. This next slide. So here are the general plan minimum requirements as set forth in the Hawaii Administrative Rules. We have a quick legend to identify the general topics for each requirement. So we're going to start at the top 1 and 2. So this green box up there is related to creating a uniform system of land use designations to use across all the plans and related types of land dispositions across the state. The next box down, the gold, is related to establishing criteria for identifying homestead lands and non-homesteading lands, lands for revenue generation, and lands for community uses. Number 7, the blue box, is related to establishing level of service standards for infrastructure and community facilities across all the different land uses. And finally, number 8, the purple, relates to the need for an evaluation system to measure success. So today we're focusing on land suitable for homesteading and how we can measure progress in meeting policy goals. And so we got 2 yellow arrows over there on number 3 and number 8, and those are really what we're hoping to accomplish to get your mana'o tonight. So where we are in the process, this slide shows an overview of the project schedule. As you can see, it's approximately a 2-year process, which started in 2020 with stakeholder interviews and background research and analysis of existing policy issues. Back in March and April of this year, we completed the first round of statewide beneficiary consultation. And tonight is part 2 of the second round of beneficiary consultation. We hope to have the third and final round of beneficiary consultation in the May-June 2022 timeframe, and then finally to get a final plan before the end of 2022. Okay, round 1 of beneficiary consultation had 2 parts to it, and we held a total of 6 virtual meetings. In the first part, we introduced ourselves and the project, and we collected input to be used to draft the plan's vision statement. In part 2, we presented the draft vision statement and started discussions on land uses. We had just under 300 people participate in those meetings, 262 people visit the virtual open house, which is still open. And the meetings are also recorded and are available on DHHL's YouTube channel, plus the project website, and I believe it's still being broadcast on local public TV stations across the state. So getting back to round 2, that was part 1. That was round 1. This is round 2. In round 2, we are exploring each policy topic in a little bit more detail that will be covered in the general plan update and providing opportunities for beneficiary input on goals and policies for each topic. We started in November. We have 4 sets of meetings planned between November and February. And you can see what topics will be covered in each set of meetings on this table here. In January, the next set of meetings will be covering healthy communities, natural and cultural resource management. And in February, we're going to be covering revenue generation and economic development. Okay, so just a quick recap from November's meetings in round 2. So far, we had covered land use, water resources, and infrastructure. We had those 2 meetings back on November 3rd and 4th. We had about 86 total participants participate in those meetings. And you can go back and get caught up if you want to. You can watch those meetings on our open house website. There is the URL address right there. And somebody in our team will also post that website address into the chat so you can click on it. I encourage everyone to go click on it during the meeting, check it out. Same thing with round one. We have our recordings of the meetings also posted onto our open house website from those meetings, so you can go and watch those also. Just a note, we had 2 meetings each, and just like this round, we're having 2 meetings each. Each meeting, it's the same presentation. We just want to give as much opportunity to get people to our meetings. So it's basically the same presentations in both meetings. Okay, talking about the vision a little bit, because this is important for us to keep in mind as we talk about policies and goals and everything that comes in this meeting and in this round. So the general plan is a vision-based document. And in the first round of beneficiary meetings, we focused on collecting input and developing a draft shared vision for 2040. Beneficiaries were asked to describe what success looks like in 20 years if the vision was achieved, and what principles we would need to follow in order to guide us there. So following round one of beneficiary consultation, we developed a draft vision statement that included guiding principles based on beneficiary input. And just wanted to note that the vision statement for 2040 is also available on the open house website. And I'm actually going to cover it in the next slide to help inform this discussion tonight. So, okay, so in the year 2040, the Hawaiian Home Lands Trust and its beneficiaries will be thriving, self-sufficient, and connected to one. Ooh, a little bit of feedback there. I'm going to mute you. Okay. Connected to one another and to the Aina. So the overarching theme is self-sufficiency, and within that, based on beneficiary input, we identified the needs for trust lands to be able to nurture and sustain beneficiary communities. A need for beneficiary communities to be self-sufficient, healthy, prosperous, and grounded in cultural knowledge and traditions. A need for beneficiaries to be thriving on the land and engage in activities that support the rehabilitation and self-determination of all Hawaiians. A need for DHHL to be sufficiently funded, transparent with beneficiaries, and collaborative towards achieving a vision, the vision, and a need for all of Hawaii to support the implementation of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So I just kind of paraphrase there, but it's important to keep these guiding principles in mind as we discuss policies and goals. Now that was the end of the updates. And we're going to dive right into the first policy topic, housing. And I'm going to turn it over to Malachi. Thank you.
Awesome. Mahalo, Jared. My name is Malachi Krishak. I'm a planner with SSFM, and I'm humbled to be working on this project. So today, in this section, or tonight, we'll provide an overview of how the general plan will talk about housing on Hawaiian homelands. So in that, I'll provide an overview of how housing activities have evolved on DHL lands since the last general plan, which was in over 20 years ago, about 20 years ago. I also share what we've heard through consultation so far, and then we'll move into more of a discussion about how this general plan update will address housing moving forward. So how was housing addressed in the last general plan? So housing was mainly considered in the residential land use goals and objectives in the last general plan. So I'll briefly walk through those in this slide, but I do want to let you know that we'll revisit these again when we move into the proposed new goals and proposed new policies a little bit later on in these slides. So the 2002 goals related to housing include substantially increasing the number of residential homesteads awards, providing a mix of housing opportunities, providing residential homesteads financing and other housing opportunities, especially to those most in need. Also includes developing integrated residential communities, ensuring existing homestead neighborhoods are maintained and healthy and attractive. And then lastly, increasing potential for folks to qualify for financing. So these might sound familiar to some of you, and that's because if you came to the first round of meetings, we actually shared these same goals in that meeting. We went through all of them for all the policy topics actually, because we wanted to get your feedback in terms of what is still relevant from the last plan now and then into the future, thinking about this plan. And actually the feedback we got in that first round of meetings is that these, generally everyone who attended viewed that these 2002 goals for housing are still important for today. So that's why we'll revisit them again as we move into our policy discussion. But there also were objectives included in the last plan. And those objectives are intended to be a little bit more specific and measurable. So the objectives related to housing include devoting a significant share of time and resources to serve applicants below 80% median income, providing a variety of residential types, ensuring availability of housing and range of housing types and affordability for people and families of all income levels. There's also an objective to deliver an average of 500 new residential housing opportunities each year. And then there was, the last two were to facilitate education in home ownership, financing, maintenance, etc., and to work with homestead associations to identify opportunities to revitalize existing neighborhoods. So we'll revisit those a little bit later on, but wanted to share how it was addressed in the last general plan. I also want to talk about what has changed since the last general plan in 2002. First, while the top overall preferred housing option for the beneficiaries on the wait list is still what's called turnkey, excuse me, I stutter sometimes, developer built homes. So single family developer built homes. There has been a growing call that the department's been hearing for more affordable housing awards. So awards such as vacant lots or lots where the owners are able to construct their own homes. And DHL has also taken action to expand other affordable housing opportunities on Hawaiian homelands. And that was through the adoption of administrative rules in 2019. And these administrative rules include opportunities for multifamily housing, rental housing, and rental kupuna housing on Hawaiian homelands. And then the department is also currently working on administrative rules amendments that would allow for supplemental dwelling units or ohana units also called, which would be allowed on existing homestead lots that have already been awarded. There's also been a more recent shift by the department to bring back agricultural leases after a long period of time in which very few to no agriculture and pastoral leases have been awarded. And this was a result from a growing desire and call for more opportunities to live and grow food and have agriculture activities on Hawaiian homelands. So this was further enabled in 2017 through administrative rule amendments, which removed the requirements for a certain amount of the plot to be cultivated under cultivation for subsistence agricultural lots. And those amendments also made possible to have smaller ag lots for subsistence. And then lastly, at the bottom here, I just want to provide a snapshot of the awards overall since the last general plan. And you can see that there's just over 4,000 awards during that time period, which comes out to about 228 awards per year. So it's less than that 500 a year target. And I do want to note that these also include the undivided interest awards, which have not been converted. And here's just a graph that shows the trends that I talked about. And you can see here in the blue is residential, and you see that increase after the 1980s and really peaking in the mid-2000s for residential awards, but then the coinciding decrease in agricultural awards kind of flatlined, same with pastoral in green here. So that's kind of what's changed. And these next few slides will provide an overview of what housing types are currently being offered or have been offered in recent history on Hawaiian homelands. We're starting here with what's called turnkey developer built housing, which is, like I said, was identified through surveys from the department over the last about 20 years as the most preferred option for housing. But these are more expensive. They range from the 200 to 400,000 range, and then they do have to be financed through mortgages. So as I mentioned, there has been a call for more affordable options since those developer-built homes are not affordable for everyone. And one of those options the department offers is the vacant lots. And the vacant lots, the department builds off-site and on-site infrastructure. And then the beneficiary lessee has the flexibility to construct their own home, but they are responsible for those construction costs. But there are some existing partnerships and supports from the department that help owner builders as well. And another housing type that's offered is rent with the option to purchase. And these homes are reserved for the beneficiaries who qualify within a certain income range, depending on the project. It's from the area median income. And those who qualify are able to pay affordable rental rates for 15 years. And then at the end of those 15 years, if they have been in compliance for that time period, they get the option to buy that home at an affordable price. They get the first option to. And then at that point, it converts into a 99-year lease. And then lastly, of course, there's agriculture and pastoral lots, which provide the option for the owner or the lessee to construct their own home on these lots. So it'd be owner-built homes. And these lots, the site infrastructure is developed by the department, but because they're agricultural or pastoral lots, they're not usually up to the same county standards as it would be for residential. But that does provide some cost savings for the lessee in that no mortgage is required to accept the award since there's not a home on the award to begin with. And then the cost savings for the department is because of the minimal infrastructural needs. And then if it's an subsistence agricultural lot, there's smaller lots, and then there's less qualification requirements to review applicants. And then the department has also explored alternative homestead housing types over the years. Some of them have been implemented in practice, some of them have just been explored conceptually. But on the top, we have the Kuleana homestead lots that some of you may be familiar with. This program was piloted in the 1990s in Kahiki Nui, and it was intended as a way to reduce the timeline for awarding lots. So the lots were provided kind of early access to unimproved land with no infrastructure, which means that the responsibility for developing that infrastructure was in the hands of the lessees. And there are definitely challenges in this initial attempt, this initial pilot. But there are definitely lessons learned over the years. And recently, the department has began planning and offering some new projects for these types of lots, currently in Anahola and Kauai, and then also on Molokai. The department also in 2012 began exploring the potential for traditional kauhale ohana concept of living on Hawaiian homelands. Just wanted to share that as something that's been explored, but actually no projects were developed there. There has been some conversations. And that's along those lines, alternative agricultural subdivision layouts have also been explored as a way to make it easier to live and provide infrastructure on agricultural lots. So on the right-hand side, you see some examples here. The top one is what's called clustered homes, which would make it easier to provide infrastructure, shared infrastructure, since the homes are closer together. And then on the bottom is a conceptual idea of individual lots, but they have shared agricultural areas to provide more access to agriculture with smaller lots. And then as mentioned earlier, the recent administrative rule amendments that were adopted provide opportunities for housing for Native Hawaiians, specifically under terms other than 99-year homestead leases. So they'd be non-homestead lease alternatives. But these rules allow for affordable rental housing to be developed specifically for Native Hawaiian beneficiaries, which may, help in the long term, help their ability to qualify and accept awards further down the line, because it lowers the housing costs right now today and provides housing at an affordable rate for those on the wait list, for instance. So some of those housing types, there's for kupuna housing, there would be rentals. There's one project, project that exists today in Waimanalo. And then there's multifamily rentals that have enabled, and this is a conceptual picture here, conceptual rendering of what it might look like in the Mo'ili'ili plot that the department owns in urban Honolulu. Maybe like high-rise multifamily rentals. Then we have accessory dwelling units or hana units, and these are actually under review right now, the administrative rules, but these are provide opportunities for lessees to develop an accessory dwelling unit on their property, and then they would be able to rent it out themselves to a Native Hawaiian, qualified Native Hawaiian beneficiary. And then another option could be farm dwellings or rentals on land leased from the department that's not homestead lease. So it's not under homestead lease. So those are the housing types. But we did hear a lot of feedback in the initial consultation about just housing in general, as it's a really important issue for the department and obviously the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So some of the things that we heard in terms of housing from the initial conversations we've had so far are that housing is really about connecting Hawaiians back to the land. And that means providing, a mix of housing opportunities to achieve that. We also heard that apartment and multifamily housing may be more desirable for kupuna or other folks who do not want to deal with the whole property. This is an option. And we did hear that there's a need to address vacant and abandoned lots that are under lease in existing homestead communities that are folks are not living in, and provide an opportunity, that already exists there. We also heard a call and desire for opportunities to live traditional Hawaiian lifestyles on Hawaiian homelands. So providing land for families to build their own hale, to grow their own food, raise animals, and practices like that. And then we also heard a strong call for housing opportunities that won't require qualifying for a mortgage, or opportunities to get land without qualifying for a mortgage. And then more generally, connection to Aina is important, no matter the housing type. There still needs to be opportunities to connect to Aina. And that homestead housing should always support self-sufficiency. So kind of growing from that input we received in this plan, so far, we want to continue with housing goals and policies that connect back to that vision and guiding principles, the vision that Jared shared. And the idea is that housing on Hawaiian homelands should connect back to and also support these areas. So we identified 3 areas in particular from the vision that really connect to housing. And I'm not going to read all of the things listed here, but everything listed does come from, it's kind of synthesized conversations from the initial input we received. But I'll summarize it. So healthy land and water, housing development should ensure that trust lands and water are protected, that water is stored, and that's cared for and able to provide for the trust and Native Hawaiians and beneficiaries. Strong communities. Housing should strengthen the lahui. It should strengthen connection to promote health and well-being for Native Hawaiians. And empowered beneficiaries, meaning that housing should provide opportunities for families and individuals to be self-sufficient and to thrive here in Hawaii. Land use. So the first round of meetings, as Jared said, we focus on land use. And if you participated in those meetings, you may remember, land use plays a really important role in the department's planning. And we talked about it like a toolbox. You can think about land use as a toolbox that's flexible enough where you can reach into it, find the tool that covers the range of uses and the needs that you desire on that piece of land. So when we're talking about housing, we want to be able to reach into the land use toolbox, and we want to find a land use that enables all the different types of housing that you envision in a place. It provides for opportunities for that. So we went through the types of housing, and now how do those fit into land use designations? So we want to make sure about that. So I'm going to go through each of these land use designations in the next few slides, and then we'll move into we'll have time for questions and open discussion. A few more slides here. So residential land use provides housing opportunities for turnkey homes, developer-built turnkey homes, vacant lot, owner-built, rent with the option to purchase. Accessory dwelling units could be possible. Also, mobile trailer dwellings is something that we heard in the first round. And it could also be provide space for multifamily dwellings, kupuna housing. That's something that we do want to maybe think about too, is whether we need to delineate between areas for residential that are for just single family homes or more areas that are for multifamily residential houses, if these need to be identified in the island plans when we get to that level. Then on the right side, you can see infrastructure requirements. We talked about that in the land use meeting, but wanted to share here so you can see like the levels. So residential needs to be built to county standards, so a little bit more infrastructure is necessary. Subsistence agriculture. Subsistence agriculture are small lot agricultural plots with the option to build a home. So the kind of homes you could build would be owner-built homes, single-family home. You could potentially have a mobile home or trailer dwelling on there, some are temporary. Or this is also a space where you can consider alternative subdivision layouts to make it easier to provide infrastructure for homes on these lands with your neighbor plots, or thinking of ways to lay out the subdivisions to enable people to live on their subsistence agricultural lots. So maybe even a kauhale type design. Supplemental agriculture is larger lot agriculture, but it's also optional to build homes, but it's to the similar housing types as subsistence. So supplementary, you could have owner built, mobile trailers, and then also those alternative, thinking about alternative subdivision layouts or even kauhale concept. Now, pastoral land use designation is the next homestead land use designation. And these are much larger plots with less infrastructure. So the housing types are a little bit more limited, where homesteaders may need to install maybe off-grid infrastructure to meet some health and safety regulations to have a home. But they would be able to build their own home, owner-built home. They could have a mobile trailer dwelling on the lot as well. And then for Kuleana, this is the least amount of infrastructure provided by the department. So the homesteaders would need to install off-the-grid infrastructure in order to live or to build a home on these lands. So it would be an owner-built or maybe a mobile trailer. And the last two land use designations are new proposed land use designations for this general plan. And they're called mixed use land use designations. The first one is neighborhood mixed use. And this is for more residential areas, but they would also provide opportunities for lessees to have commercial activities out of their land, off of their homestead land, mixed in with the residential. And so the residential housing types that would be permitted in this would be turnkey homes, could be developer built, rent with the option to purchase, could be accessory dwelling units, multifamily dwelling units, or kupuna rental housing even. And then these areas again would be built up to the county standards in a similar way that residential areas would need to be. And then lastly, central mixed use, which would essentially be replacing commercial. But these areas, so it'd be areas you're thinking about, commercial areas that support more high density development, but would allow for housing as well. So thinking about housing in that setting, the possible housing types, the multifamily could be homestead, it hasn't been tried before, but it could be rent with the option to purchase in similar kind of multifamily developments. And then this is where those new affordable rental options, multifamily rental options, Kupuna housing rental options would fit in as well. And again, this is built to the higher county standards for infrastructure. So I know that was a kind of a lot of slides and information to get through. So we want to stop here and provide an opportunity to ask questions about any of that, and then also have open discussion. I'm going to hand it back to Jared for that part.
That was a lot. What it boils down to, so let's go to the next slide that has the question. So do the land use designations capture the types of housing you would want to see on Hawaiian homelands? So what it boils down to is Malachi presented the potential types of housing that might be available on the land use designations. And he also presented the existing land use designations and a few new ones, Kuleana, neighborhood mixed use, and central mixed use. So we're going to open up for discussion right now. And I see Cora has her hand up. Cora, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Aloha, everyone. Wait, that's done. I just wanted to make some comments because several things that are not being taken into consideration is that one, with the COVID situation, yeah, and Molokai has the highest, we're not in the same situation like Honolulu or Maui. We don't have the resources. Our families don't have the resources to even engage in a mortgage piece of it. So I don't think that when we look at what is out there for our people in regards to mortgage, I think one size doesn't fit all. The other comment I want to make is that when we look at the dwelling, the ohana dwelling, and there was another housing, the dwelling and the farm dwelling, I think those two. My question is, are those health and safety certified? Yes or no? I'm not looking at you folks, that's why I'm sorry. So that's my question. And if it's yes, then why couldn't we use that same type of certification into the Kuleana or Ag Subsistence land use designation? And why wouldn't our applicants be able to be qualified in those type of mortgage loan? Why wouldn't it make it available for our waitlisters? Those are my questions. Mahalo.
Okay, thanks, Cora. Before we get to Ron and Doreen, I think the first question was whether the farm dwellings are health and safety certified. That might boil down to whether or not they receive building permits. That might be it.
So generally, Oha Cora, thank you for the question. Generally, the department does require lessees to get a building permit for health and safety reasons. By getting the building permit, it assures that the structure that the lessee is putting up is safe to occupy and also doesn't provide a risk or danger to the neighbors.
Mahalo. Andrew, and a follow-up question would be, my follow-up question would be then, if those, that looks like one hostel dorm floor plan, if the hostel dorm floor plan is already safety and health certified, it's already health certified, then it wouldn't be necessary. I think the commissioners at that level looking into Kuleana, the commissioners make that decision to accept that type of dwelling. Is that correct?
I think if I understand your question correctly, and correct me if I don't, I think what you're asking and potentially suggesting is for the department to look at and consider packaged homes like the Hansador one, where they are it's like a kit, you put it together, and they already kind of go through a review of structural integrity and health and safety review. So I think, is that your suggestion, is that the department consider more package type homes like Considor?
Well, I
Or-
think it's an option for our applicant because it's already certified. So to create the will, it's already done. It's already certified. And yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the department should look at providing options that are already certified in order to make it more affordable for our
As
future
an
lessees.
option.
Okay.
Yes, as an
Right.
option.
Very good. Ron and Doreen. Looks like Ron. Go ahead.
Yeah, aloha, Andrew, I'm sorry if I was a little terse with you last night.
No, you had every right to be. I screwed up. The website was not updated with the correct information. So thank you
Andrew,
for pointing it out.
Remember a few years ago, I sent you, Julie, Joby, and somebody else in planning that I asked you folks to take a trip to Vegas. And the reason I asked you folks to go there is I lived there for 5 years. And every year, all the manufactured homes, basically trailer homes, they have a big show there. And if you folks never walked into a trailer home, and you cannot see a trailer home already. It is beautiful. You got single wides, you got double wides, you got triple wides. But I always felt it's an option for a lot of us, especially the seniors. My idea was to approach some of these companies. And on the Big Island in Hilo, the Kanolehua industrial area, a lot of leases are coming due in 22, 23, 24. My idea is to offer one or two of these trailer companies to come here and build the trailer homes here. I went to the planning department. There is no law against a trailer home. A friend of mine works for Kona Trans, a transportation company. A lot of trailer homes are coming into Hilo because they have to deliver it. And sometimes he says they cannot even find the road, but somehow they manage to install them. So I just feel this is the option because I think for kupunas, most homes are too big for them. So I feel it'll benefit the wait list if their parents move out of the house to someplace else, then they themselves can, take over their existing lease. And for me, that's one of the programs we're trying to do. I'm planning to build a Hansador tiny home. I have a lot out in Puna. And so me and my wife is going to try and build actually 5 attached tiny homes. And the reason for that is as you get older, we want to rent it out to nurses, to help that we might need around the house, because we're in the process of transferring our house to one of our kids. So that's why. The only thing that's illegal is trailer home parks. I don't know why, but if you put it on DHHL land, does it matter? Number 2, are the like Jared Chang, you're a contractor, am I not right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're consultant.
Are you familiar with the Hawaiian Homes Act?
This is Joe Simpliciano, right? So
The Hawaiian Homes Act?
Yes.
I think he's running for sure.
Okay, the reason I asked is Article 226, qualification for federal programs. I have in front of me Community Facilities Direct Loan and Grant Program from the USDA. I have in front of me Mutual Self-Help Housing Technical Assistance Guide. I feel for a lot of Hawaiians, a lot of their family members are in the trades. And the cheapest way, I feel, the least expensive way for Native Hawaiians to get back on the land is to do self-help. where DHHL responsibility is to hire retired contractors to supervise the work. I saw it come up in Panaeva, where 18 of the homes there were self-help. And you know what? The people that did the self-help were very, very proud to have built those homes. And to me, the reason I like self-help, because as you're building the home, you're building a community. And that's what I like about it. You're already going to know your neighbors because you're working with one another. So you're going to break sweat, spill blood, but in the end, you become good friends and good neighbors. So that was my two. If we can do more self-help and consider looking into trailer homes. And I really mean it that, Andrew, go to Vegas, find out when the convention is, and go to Vegas. You know, it'll be worth your while because I tell you, where I live both in Arizona and in Nevada, a lot of the people that I work with lived in trailer homes. I mean, you get good trailer homes and bad trailer homes. For, you know, if that's all you can live as a good starter home, as a retirement home, I would seriously look at trailer home parks, especially for kupunas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your suggestions on housing options.
And your second comment is another one that we've been hearing a lot also. So I can that resonates with this team too, Ron. Thank you. No other hands up. So let's move into the goals, policies, and metrics. So Malachi has about 3 more slides. We're gonna pause at each slide and try and see if there's more comments to come in. Bernadine, you'll be first, but let's let Malachi get to the first 2 slides. Bernadine, if you don't mind.
Okay. Jared. Okay, so how will housing be addressed? And actually, this is how all policy topics will be addressed in the general plan. I just want to set the table here. And the first way that we're going to be addressing these policy issues like housing and food production is through expression of goals. And you saw that in the beginning, the 2002 general plan had goals, but these are broad statements, but they should express kind of the desired end state, the desired outcome that you're looking for. And then the next level down, we're gonna have policies. And in the last plan, there's objectives. We're changing those over to policies because we're gonna be adding the metrics in as a third level. But the policies are more of, you can think of them more as general, as the roads leading to the more general goals. So they provide the guidelines and actions that we should follow in order to achieve the related goal for the policy. So usually there's multiple policies related to one goal. And then the last level is metrics. And we want to identify, so we want the policy to be measurable. We want the metrics to identify the ways that we measure whether the policies are achieving the desired results. So we're going to talk about those in these next couple slides and get your feedback there. Housing goals. So the top here, we have those same relevant 2002 general plan goals related to housing. I'm going to read through them, and then at the bottom we have some additional proposed goals for 2040. So the relevant goals from the last general plan is substantially increase the number of residential homesteads awarded each year, provide a mix of housing opportunities that reflect the needs and desires of Native Hawaiian beneficiaries, provide residential homesteads, financing, and other housing opportunities, especially to those in need, and then to develop integrated residential communities that are reflective of the diverse socioeconomic profiles of the Native Hawaiian community. And the last two are to ensure existing homestead neighborhoods are maintained as healthy and attractive communities for future generations, and to increase the potential for beneficiaries to qualify for a residential housing financing. This relates to some of the comments we heard already. And then we're proposing a couple of additional goals to consider for 2040. The first one is to prioritize housing for beneficiaries before considering other uses of Hawaiian homelands. So considering uses that allow for housing. And the second is to provide opportunities for affordable rentals to beneficiaries. And then moving into policies. So as I said, we're changing the lingo for this, but the objectives in the last plan kind of relate to the policy. We'll cross over to policies. So the relevant objectives that we're crossing over include to devote a significant share of time and resources to serve applicants with income below 80% of the median family income level, provide a variety of residential types to meet the needs of beneficiaries in terms of construction procedures. So we went over owner built, turnkey, self-help, and types of housing. So thinking about single family, multifamily, kapuna housing, rental housing, financing. Ensure the availability of housing with a range of types and affordability to accommodate persons and families of all income levels in the locations that are convenient to employment and quality public and private facilities. Then the next objective is to develop integrated residential communities that are reflective of the diverse socioeconomic profiles of Native Hawaiians communities. And then this is more of a metric, but it was included in objectives, but it's to deliver an average of 500 new residential housing opportunities per year in proportion to the number of applicants on the residential waiting list. And the last two, facilitate education in home ownership, financing, maintenance, and long-term financial resource management, and work with homestead associations to identify opportunities to revitalize existing neighborhoods. So a lot of these are still relevant, like we heard in the first round, but we did have some additional policy direction consideration for this update, 2040. And those include to devote time and resources to serve applicants who fall within the quote unquote gap group. So it'd be people who wouldn't qualify for the Nahas the Block funding, which is for 80% of the median income level, but also cannot afford fee simple housing that's not on Hawaiian Home Lands. That's a lot of us. And then that second one is to balance resources to maintain and repair aging infrastructure in existing neighborhoods, homestead neighborhoods, with meeting the targets for new homestead development.
Okay, so we're gonna pause here, and we want to get your guys' input on the housing goals, so the last two slides, and policies. And we can switch between the slides. And Bernadine, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Thank you for walking through these slides. It's very helpful. But with a goal of 500 homes, I guess given to lessees a year, it seems kind of low. And if we've done just 228 over the past, 228 a year over the past 18 years, why isn't it much higher? I mean, there's just lots of money available here, and it just doesn't seem to be getting out. And how do you plan to get to 500 homes per year? I'll let you answer it, and then I do have other questions, but I'll let you answer this one first, please.
Thank you for the question. So the 500 home target was one of the targets that were articulated in the 2002 plan. And obviously from the information that we presented tonight, the department has fallen short. One of the biggest barriers has been just the amount of resources it takes to develop the infrastructure to support homes. So some of the alternative development options that we talked about this evening, like subsistence agriculture or Kuleana lots, were meant as a way to try to get to more home awards quicker, because it would result in lesser infrastructure being built, which would help to quicken the time. So I think those are different types of strategies that the department has contemplated over the last 20 years. Obviously, there are other types of strategies that we need to consider going forward. And I think some of the comments shared by some of the participants are really good mana'o that we need to look at and see if we can incorporate those suggestions into the plan going forward as potential strategies to meet a target number of homes. So I guess my quick answer is we need to develop better strategies to reach our target, whatever that target number is. Some of the ways that we develop these strategies is by outreaching with beneficiaries such as yourself and others on this call.
So you're saying the largest barrier is the infrastructure, getting the infrastructure, like the sewage, water, those roads built and so on? Is that the key barrier?
It is one of the largest barriers, yes.
Okay, but there's funding for that, right? From the Hawaiian Homelands. I mean,
Our funding is from the state legislature, and every year the department goes to the legislature with a request for sufficient funds to cover these types of costs. Sometimes the legislature gives us 30 million a year. Sometimes it varies. The level of funding that the department receives from the legislature has varied over the last 20 years. In the early 2000s, the amount of funding was zero. And at that point in time, beneficiaries filed a lawsuit against the state for not sufficiently funding the department as required by the state constitution. Some of the other revenue streams that the department receives in addition to from the state legislature are federal funds, such as the Native American Housing and Self-Determination Act from the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department. Also, the department does derive revenue from leasing of lands for commercial purposes. So we do have other funding sources in addition to the state legislature, but the state legislature makes up the majority of the department's revenue stream.
okay, and then who's supposed to be ensuring that we've got that funding available? Is that you folks supposed to be ensuring we're getting funding, that we're asking for the funding and the funding is coming through and it's being allocated?
It's contingent upon the department and the Hawaiian Homes Commission to make the request to the state legislature, because the state legislature is composed of elected officials that are subject to elections every 2 years or every 4 years. It is really helpful if beneficiaries can help inform our legislators about the importance of funding DHHL.
Okay, but that's really why you folks are there, right? Is just to ensure that the funding is available for us to build these homes. You can't ask the beneficiaries to be going and, yeah, we can write some letters, but the biggest impact is going to come from you folks at DHHL kind of going after that.
I think what Andrew is saying is DHHL makes the requests for sufficient funding, but what really maybe creates more success in getting more funds is legislators also hearing from their constituents that it's important to keep DHHL funded sufficiently.
Okay, have you folks asked beneficiaries to help in this effort?
Repeatedly, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I always use the help. Okay.
And so
go ahead.
I've got another question, sorry. So over the past 20 years, then we've been struggling with this and we need to reprioritize and set new goals. I mean, really it takes 20 years to set that. It just seems like it seems like people aren't getting into properties and getting into homes. And so just some change just really needs to be made here, because 500 a year just seems really low. I mean, 228 a year in the past 18 years. It's like, come on, the Hawaiian population is much larger than that. And you look in Waimanalo, there's a lot of abandoned lots. There's houses, dilapidated houses that haven't been lived in 2-3 years, and nothing's happening with it. Why aren't those being cleaned up and given to other people to use?
I think you're right. The pace of development needs to increase related to the I think there's not just in Waimanalo, but other homestead communities, there is the perception that lots are abandoned. However, there are instances in where there is still a lessee of record, and even though the lessee may not be living in the house, there is a lessee of record, and that lessee is afforded due process before the department cancels their lease. So in a lot of instances, the department is maybe going through a process to cancel the lease of a lessee for failing to live on the lot, which is a lease requirement. So it does take a while to go through the legal process to remove the lessee from the lot.
But I mean, how long does it take? I mean, I walk the neighborhood. I see these houses that have been dilapidated. No one's living in it. I mean, there's not
Again,
even mongoose living in there.
We need to go through a legal process to ensure that the lessee is given their due process to make a case why their lease isn't canceled. And that due process, the legal process, it depends on how long or how many appeals are made either by the department or by the lessee. So it depends.
So how long, what is an average time it should take for that to happen then?
Again, it depends on the legal process. So I don't have an answer for your question.
Would you have a range of how long it has taken?
There has been no average range. It depends.
That doesn't seem like a sufficient answer. It just doesn't seem to like address.
I know it. Again, I don't have the answer that you want, but there is
Okay,
no.
but can someone research it then and say, okay, in the past 10 years, we've had to retake back.
Sure, we can research it.
100 houses, and the average time it took to go through the legality of it was maybe 3 years to 5 years. So that would be useful, just because it's sad to see how we have Hawaiian people homeless living at the beach, and you have these properties here, you know, they could afford it if they pulled their family together, but they can't. And these properties are just dilapidated. It's annoying to hear that these things take 20 years, and it's annoying to hear that it's taken 228 houses per year over the past 18 years, and we're shooting for 500 a year. I mean, how many Hawaiian people are out there? Definitely more than 500. I mean, it just seems like more effort needs to be put into this, because these houses aren't being allocated.
So I guess what you're suggesting is that in addition to building new homes, we look at reaward of properties that are underutilized. I think that's a good strategy to help increase the number of homes awarded per year. But the important thing to remember is that even though those properties look abandoned, most often cases they do belong to a beneficiary. And
yes, I understand it belongs to someone, but if they're not caring for it, they're not living there, then obviously they've neglected it. I mean, my grandmother lived in Nanakuli. She had a large lot. She had half of it taken away from her from DHHL because she wasn't using it. So, I mean, it was her property, but she had it taken away. So she got a smaller lot because of that. Why don't we have the same types of rules as we did back then when she had her land? I mean, it just seems like things are just kind of falling apart.
Okay.
Bernadine, I think at this time, you know, we got the comment. Seeing empty lots is something we've been hearing across the state also. So I think your suggestion to identify how long does it actually take, you know, to go through a contested case or due process, I think that's a good input here. I'd like to move. We got 3 more hands up.
Yep.
So if you don't mind, let's go to Cindy.
If you can, folks, just please make sure to address these. That'd be great. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks. Yeah, Cindy Home and then Moana Wilan. So Cindy, go ahead.
Aloha, mahalo for this opportunity and mahalo for the information. However, this information to me is unacceptable. You guys having problems with legislation already. It's a long time going on, let alone the federal government. It's a long time going on. And you guys looking for money for infrastructure. I understand you need infrastructure, but have you guys ever thought of just giving the land raw? It's to that point to the people, especially me. And most of us, not all, live off the land, literally. We can live off the land. Rather it's a generator, rather it's a water catchment, we make do with what we got. And we are so blessed with Mother Nature on top of that all. With the rich soil, the rain, all that elements, we live off of that. So instead of battling with legislation for X amount of years and not getting nowhere, and this 500 houses is unacceptable. You might as well give it to us raw, like how you guys gave Kahiki Nui raw, and let everybody build their own or however, and live the basic natural life. We are not, some people I can see, you know, that needs those things in life. But when you're not making too much money, especially in Hawaii, you know, with the high cost of everything, you tend to turn to the land and live off of it. And I think, you know, there needs to be a balance with or without the infrastructure. You need to balance, say for instance, habitat, so much percentage lock and turnkey, so much percentage owner builder or however category. I'm getting tired of seeing contractors from the mainland coming down here, building our homes that cost more than our needs. And we all are stuck up against the wall with 1 or 2 jobs just to make ends meet. I mean, that's not self-sufficient. That is torture to me. So you might as well just give the land raw like you guys used to do before and gave us whatever. No, you know, no daisy roses on it anymore. We're trying to just live at this point with what we have. And to me, just giving me a raw land, I'm a happy camper. I don't care if I pitch a tent. At least I don't have to pay somebody that money to live in one house that I won't even be there 100%. I'm lucky if I can be in my own house 5% of the time. The rest of the time I'm out there struggling just to make ends meet. I don't want to live a life like that. I don't want to live a life and battling with legislation to tell them, you guys need to get on this for Hawaiian Homestead. How many times I support you guys on ledge? I support what you guys are saying, but it seems like they hold a deaf ear and a blind eye. And I'm tired. So put into this general plan to give us the land raw, especially the generation now. They're healthy. They can live on that land. Even though if they have to pitch a tent, I don't need a golden carpet to live in one house, just to have a land that calls home.
Right.
Thank
Cindy,
you.
yeah. And we've been hearing that since the beginning of this process for the update. And you might want to go back to the open house, look at the PowerPoint, but in the proposed land use designations for housing that Malachi presented, we have a Kuleana land use designation, which would do exactly that as a new proposed land use designation. So I think we are kind of on the same page with what you're saying, and we're hearing others saying it too.
Yeah, but make most of the land like that because we're not getting nowhere. We are not getting nowhere. 20 years later, we're still on the bottom of ledge. I can tell you that much. This is a track record. So
okay,
I'm
we hear
over
you.
the ledge.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Home, go ahead. And then Moana Wilan.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I appreciate the comments and I understand the frustration of those who have spoken before me. With regards to infrastructure costs, it has grown considerably. And I refer to a beneficiary study that was done back in 2014 and then again in 2020. And the survey was taken by, from applicants. And in 2014, almost 9,000 applicants wanted a turnkey lot. 1,200 wanted a lot with just the water, sewer, and electricity, no house. In 2020, 12,500 applicants wanted a turnkey lot, and 5,200 wanted a lot with water, sewer, and electricity. I've just heard the lady that just spoke, and I absolutely understand what she's saying. I think we need to look at the different islands. When we talk about Oahu, who has the largest number of residential applicants, there is concern in terms of not following county guidelines for building homes, whether it be turnkey or just placing infrastructure. Number one, Oahu doesn't have the kind of land that we need for those 10,000 applicants on the wait list who want a turnkey home. We just don't have the land. Now, it might be different for those on the outer islands like Molokai, Maui, Kauai, and also the Big Island. But for us here on Oahu, it's a very different story. The other thing to consider is that as homesteads age, the department spends millions of dollars refurbishing or updating the infrastructure. That will continue as long as our homesteads age. In my particular homestead, our roads, lights, infrastructure has not been turned over to the city. So the department pays for that cost. And so the department is not just trying to get our people on the land in whatever way they can, which is why there's been variations as you have provided in the previous slides as to the opportunity for Kuleana lands, like Kahikinui, which I think the lady who spoke before me is asking for. There is also the ADOs. So when we think about housing, we need to also consider housing that can be done on different islands. Whereas in Honolulu, City and County of Honolulu, every county has their own guidelines for permitting and planning. And I understand that the department does not have to follow county guidelines. But the problem there for us on Oahu is that if they don't, then the department is stuck with maintaining the infrastructure as they have in my homestead and all of the homesteads on Oahu, pretty much. I don't know of any homestead on Oahu that has been turned over. So when you're talking about maintaining the lights, maintaining trimming trees, maintaining roads, maintaining sidewalks, that is a whole separate source of funding that the department has to consider. So while I can appreciate maybe other counties might have a more lenient permitting and planning and design, for Oahu, it's a little different. So I just want us to consider that there are different options that we can look at. And we also need to make sure that when we are looking at housing for our people, that they are going to be safe and that they are going to thrive, which is part of this whole plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Mahalo, Auntie Home.
Moana Willan, you had your hand up, but it went down. Maybe we can cover, Malakai, the metrics for housing, and then Moana, if you want to comment after that, then you'll be first.
Sure. Okay. Hello, Jared, and hello, everyone, for those comments. This next slide actually, I think, speaks to some of the comments they had. And we just, before we go into the metrics for housing and how we want to measure success related to housing in this plan, I just wanted to share this generalized timeline of what it takes to get kind of raw land into home construction, for because thinking in terms of the developer built homes. So you can see the process is actually a 6 to 8 year process right now. That's what it looks like. So it includes, identifying the project in the island plan to begin with. Then there's, the planning and environmental compliance, the Chapter 343 EAs, environmental compliance, which takes 1 to 2 years. And then it moves into the engineering and design. It takes another 2 to 3 years, and moving into review. And then at that point, you can move into the construction, infrastructure construction. And as people point out, that's one of the biggest barriers, not only in terms of cost, but it takes a while too, 2 to 3 years there. And then you move into the housing construction. And then it moves into the lease awards. So it's a 6 to 8 year process right now. This is a generalized timeline of what it takes to develop raw land into homes. So housing metrics that to consider for the 2040 general plan update. The first one is the number of homestead lots in planning, design, and construction. And thinking about it in terms of that reporting period that accounts for that 6 to 8 year development time. And so making sure that there's always homesteads in development at some phase. So it's a constant flow. You kind of help to address any shortage. The percent of the budget spent on maintenance and repair versus new homesteads. I think Auntie Home briefly touched on that in her comment. The next is percentage of homestead lots available for qualified income levels. So making sure that all the beneficiaries have opportunities for awards. Next is number of applicants on the wait list. Simple one, but important one. And then this is number 5 is number of rentals being offered, affordable housing, thinking about affordable housing, thinking about housing just in general. And the last one is number of beneficiaries served by home ownership education programs and services. So that's to help with financial readiness. And those are the housing metrics.
Okay, we're gonna pause again here and see if there's any thoughts you guys want to share on the potential housing metrics that would be part of the evaluations, part of the general plan. Moana, did you want to come back and give us your comment? You're very patient, waiting for your turn to speak.
Thank you for the information. I believe you answered a few of my questions in this last 2 slides, but thank you. I don't have any further questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Let's see. I'm gonna go to Keone, Roy, and then Bernadine, just to give the other guys that haven't spoken yet a chance. So Keone, go ahead.
Aloha. Is there any intention to try and decrease that 6 to 8 year development time frame, or is the plan to go with that and base everything on that time frame?
I think to answer your question, some of the options that we're looking at are trying to increase the Kuleana option. What a lot of the previous speakers have been saying is give us the raw land. The Kuleana option is one potential strategy to decrease the 6 to 8 year development timeframe for a homestead lot, which assumes infrastructure, roads, water, sewer. So one of the strategies is to look at Kuleana lot offerings as well as subsistence lot offerings, which would provide less infrastructure, but decrease the time to award.
Thank you, Andrew. So I think the answer was yes. Yeah. So Roy, go ahead. Good question, Tion.
I just wanted to say that I'm hearing all this about infrastructure, and to me, that seems to be a big obstacle as far as some of our leasees are concerned. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I have experience with Bishop Estate. I had a farm over in Honolulu on the Big Island that Bishop Estate was doing farming lots that had no infrastructure on them. And we had catchment water. It was the beginning of solar voltaic electricity. I remember my telephone coming in where the poles were picked up by a helicopter on the highway and brought up because our road was four-wheel drive. And there is a way to do things, but you have to be committed to either do your own infrastructure or address your priorities so that you know, things happen and you move forward. So I myself live in a residential on Maui, Waihuko 3. And we have, you know, I've learned some things here. I've been president of this association for quite a while now. And there have been things that we were given when my father was the one that got a lease here. And when he passed away, I took over on it. But, you know, if you go and you look at what DHHL gave us as far as governing structure that we could use in order to answer questions and promote the ideas that we thought were important to our leasees, this is how you gotta, you know, to me, this is the way to answer your questions and move your community forward. And we are one of the few communities that have DCCNRs. We have we also have $30 a month dues that we put in a kitty, and that's what we look towards to help in infrastructure. Because I think DHHL, what they did when they were thinking about our residents was they wanted to take themselves out of the maintenance part of our residents and put that on our shoulders. And that's how come they did the DCCNRs and the Homeowners Association, which, you know, a lot of people in our community didn't like in the beginning, but we have changed people over to thinking that that's a more positive thing than what they believed in the beginning. And the reason for that is our approach to using that carrot instead of the stick when we promote how to address our association and what we do. And to me, that's part of what these homesteads are all about. It's about figuring out for your particular situation what you've had as tools in your toolbox to address those things, that you use them accordingly, but try and bring the whole community on board with you. Once the community is on board, it's a very strong movement. But if you don't get the community involved, you're, to me, on an uphill climb with no four-wheel drive. So I'm just saying that there is a lot of ways to answer these things where, you know, this 6 to 8 year plan on your development, to me, you got to look at that, because a lot of people tonight are talking about, you got to cut this down. This is way too time invested in something that is actually showing us not that much of a return. So we got to look at something different. And thank you for letting me vent, but some of these things I feel strongly about, and I'm hearing some of the same things from other people on this meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Thank you. Bernadine, you can go ahead, but I'm going to ask you to try and keep it brief if you can, so we can move into the next section of the presentation.
Okay, great. I do have a couple questions. We'll see how much we get through. So for the turnkey homes that are available out there, I've seen some of them available. The price just seems kind of high, though. I mean, you're not paying for land, right? You're paying for the house being built. Why are the houses so expensive? It just seems like it should be more reasonably priced, given that you're not really paying for the land. The builder isn't paying for the land. So my question is, are we screening the builders to make sure that they're charging reasonable rates, that they aren't increasing their percentage, that their cut of it basically because it's so cheap? I mean, I wouldn't want to see us not going through and making sure we're providing reasonably priced housing to people. So are we screening the builders or contractors and so on to make sure that their rates, that the profit that they're making on the properties are reasonable?
The department usually goes through a competitive bidding process through the state procurement laws. So during that first competitive bidding process, contractors or developers are required to submit their cost. And one of the factors that the department uses to select a development partner is the cost. And we look at development partners that provide the lowest cost in addition to their qualifications to provide safe housing, quality housing.
So what is the average cost per square foot then for a turnkey house that's built?
It depends on the location and during the time.
Say on Oahu versus Maui.
I'm not sure right now.
Can you check?
Yep.
Like to build a house, it's roughly 200 per square foot. But I mean,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to ask you guys to continue this conversation. If you have more questions, Bernadine, you can throw it in a chat and you can try and get to it, but we have to move on to the next section. Thank you. Melissa, are you ready on food production?
Yes, I am. All right, I'll try to
ahead.
get this quickly so we can get to the discussion on it. Let's move along. Okay, so talking about food production, this is a topic that the general plan from 2002 covered mostly under the headings of agriculture and pastoral. So you can see the goals and objectives here, and I'm not going to spend time going through them now because we're going to be talking about them again in a little bit. But you can see here that it was mainly addressed in those two topic sections. All right, next slide. So currently there's a little over 1,000 agricultural leases and 413 pastoral leases awarded on DHHL land. And there haven't been a lot of new ones awarded in the last 20 years since the last general plan. However, the list of applicants grew substantially by almost 6,000. So, and in response to that, DHHL has initiated planning and development of several new subsistence agricultural homestead communities. So you can see here there's some in progress on Hawaii Island, Kauai, Maui, and Molokai as well. So these are all in process of planning and or development right now, and they're subsistence ag communities. So generally lots of 3 acres or less with some larger lots available. And then there's also been a trend toward more beneficiary organizations being interested in food production on Hawaiian homelands and developing initiatives. So there's been farmers markets and livestock initiatives, and these other ones listed here, such as KKOA in Anahola. So they're all doing good work and promoting food production as well as cultural practices and education. Next slide. All right, so here's a snapshot of the Homestead lease awards over time, and you can see that, you know, while residential has had a lot more growth and peaks, agricultural and pastoral have been pretty flat over the last, basically since the 90s. There was a bump in agricultural in the 80s and one in pastoral in the 90s, but since then, not a lot has happened. Next slide. So realizing the demand for agricultural lots and also the need to help beneficiaries succeed in farming, the department is currently working on an agricultural program plan. You know, they recognize all the benefits of agriculture and food production as a way of not just being self-sufficient, but reconnecting with culture and engaging with place and supporting beneficiary health and happiness. So the plan is really geared toward providing programs to support beneficiaries in becoming more successful Hawaiian farmers. And let's go to the next slide. There's a survey done in 2020 to applicants to try to get an assessment of what their needs are. And they found that 80% intend to farm and build a home. So they want to live on and work the land. Most of them want to do more subsistence related farming for their own families. Only about 10% wanted to do commercial farming. And then over half of existing agricultural lessees are living on their lot, and 21% are not gardening or farming. So, and then the average age of agricultural applicants is also relatively high, over 60 years old. So this just kind of gives a snapshot of who's on the wait list to help inform the programs that DHHL is putting together. Next slide. Here's just a couple examples of some of the success stories. You know, Wow Farms on Big Island and Molokai Livestock Association. So there are a lot of active ag activities happening on DHHL land right now, as well as the future ones that they hope to promote. So throughout this process, you know, we've been at it for a little while, and we have heard a lot of input about how important it is to beneficiaries to have food production on Hawaiian homelands. And, you know, part of what we heard is an interest in producing food for the lahui and decreasing reliance on imports. And that, you know, that producing food on Hawaiian homelands helps perpetuate culture and language, teach the next generation, and that there should be opportunities to provide food and energy on Hawaiian homelands to support self-sufficiency and to train the youth. So these are all things that are really important to beneficiaries in this process. Next slide. And so kind of combining all the input and the survey results that we've heard, there's clearly a need for education and technical assistance for people who want to farm on Hawaiian homelands. Some of the challenges are the water systems. We've already heard that, you know, DHHL sometimes has to manage its own infrastructure systems. They can't rely on counties to provide them. And when they need to do that, there's a high cost involved, as well as staffing resources and maintenance. And then we have to think about the land requirements. So some places have a lot of land available, but say on Oahu, there's not much land available for agricultural pastoral leases. And pastoral leases require a lot more land than agricultural leases. We're also faced with climate change increasing, and we don't know exactly how and where those effects are going to impact the ability to farm, but we know that they're coming. And then there's opportunities for supporting food security while perpetuating cultural practices and knowledge through food production. All right, so similar to how Malachi did with housing, I'm going to talk about how food production relates to the proposed new land use designations for the general plan. Some of these are existing, but the ones that say new are new. So the first four are existing homestead uses. And so they all allow for some level of food production, subsistence agriculture, of course, and supplemental ag. Subsistence is smaller lot, supplemental is larger lot, more for commercial use. Pastoral is for livestock and ranching. Kuleana could be somewhat more flexible on what you could do, to produce food. And then there's these other designations that could have some opportunities for food production. So stewardship is a new designation that replaces the general ag designation that's existing now. So lands that might not be used for homesteading in the short term, but may have some uses, including agriculture in the interim. Special district are areas that have unusual opportunities or constraints. So they might be coastal areas and floodplains. You wouldn't want to build houses there, but you could have kalo or other types of activities like fish ponds. And then community uses, those are more kind of community gathering areas, and they could host farmers markets and other outlets for people to sell their produce. And then finally, community agriculture is a new designation we're looking at that's more directly related to growing food in homestead communities and providing common areas for agriculture. So, that could also include food processing facilities for people that want to hooey up and do that on Hawaiian Homelands. Let's go to the next slide. Here's just a few photos that kind of illustrate the different types of uses. We'll just go through those quickly and keep moving. All right, yeah, I'd like to get to this discussion because we're running short on time.
Actually, Melissa, let's have you just go through the last 4 slides.
Okay.
Just to make sure we get through it, and then we'll open for discussion. We can always come back to these.
Sounds good. All right. So again, the general plan has goals, policies, and metrics. So I'm going to go through some of the direction we're thinking about for those for food production. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so some of the goals that we're looking at carrying forward from the 2002 general plan, we want to award more agricultural and pastoral leases, provide infrastructure, technical assistance, and financial support for these agricultural and pastoral leases. And we want to provide commercial leasing opportunities for beneficiaries as well for agricultural and pastoral uses. And then another goal is to conserve the most productive agricultural lands for intensive agriculture and pastoral use. So that's just a land use planning type goal. So additional goals we could consider for this update is promoting a diversity of food production, providing programs to support beneficiaries, and these are some specific ones that are being considered in the department's agricultural program plan that's being developed right now. We want to make sure that agricultural homestead offerings are aligned with what beneficiaries need and want. And we want to research and develop new food production technologies and explore how those could be done on Hawaiian Homelands. Support programs that combine food production with education and traditional cultural practices, and increase the number of successful Native Hawaiian farmers on Hawaiian Homelands. So those are the overarching goals that we're looking at, and keep those in mind, and we can always come back to them when we get your input on those. Let's go to the policies. So some of the policies, carrying forward from the 2002 plan could be, again, technical, marketing, and financial assistance, providing agricultural and pastoral lots for subsistence and supplemental purposes, and making sure that general leases are made available for commercial use by Native Hawaiians, and emphasizing, Native Hawaiians and beneficiaries as the recipients of those. Establishing minimum infrastructure requirements for agricultural and pastoral leases so that people getting those lots know what they're going to get with the infrastructure. So again, I think the first two down below of the additional ones we're considering are just kind of ways of restating those, just increasing the offerings and making sure that leases are awarded to Native Hawaiians. We also want to look at how food production could be integrated into non-homestead areas, like some of the ones that I mentioned, special district or stewardship areas. Promoting pastoral uses in areas prone to fire hazards is a way of helping protect communities from fire hazards while also providing pastoral opportunities. And then, since the state is also trying to move toward food sustainability, there's an opportunity for DHHL to set goals and move in alignment with the state's goals for making Hawaii more self-sufficient and growing its own food. Okay, one last slide and then we'll get everyone's thoughts. So metrics are how we measure success. So how do we know that the general plan policies are succeeding? And we can look at, these are things that we can try to measure and report on. So number of agricultural and pastoral homestead awards would be one way that we could measure progress. The number of non-homestead awards to beneficiaries and beneficiary organizations for food production. The number of acres farmed and the type of food produced. The number of beneficiaries who have participated in agriculture education programs. And then of course, the number of community agriculture programs and projects. So those are some of the metrics that we came up with, and if you guys have ideas for additional measures of success, I'd be happy to hear that. So let's open it up. I'll turn it back to Jared. Thank you.
Yep. Any thoughts on the land use designations, goals, policies? Keone, you had your hand up from last time. Not sure if you had a comment, but we'll go to Roy first and come back to you if needed. Roy, go ahead. If you're speaking, you're still muted.
Excuse me. I'm interested in some of these commercial applications that are being mentioned here. And one of the things I'm interested in is there any interest in, I'm talking about hemp production here, where I have seen that there has been a lot of emphasis in trying to come up with building products made of hemp that are, well, to me, they're like Legos, where they go into a form, they're pressed, and then they can be glued together so that you can have a building, a wall. And to me, something like this, where DHHL has a lot of land that hemp can be grown on because of the fact that it's not a very, as far as an agricultural product, it is something that doesn't need a lot of fertilizer, doesn't need, well, it needs water, but what I'm trying to say is that once it's grown and then the process is to take the inner fibers of that and use that for building material to be pressed into blocks. To me, DHHL, because they have the land to grow that, and because they have the need to produce housing, it's, to me, a very strong, you know, it's a win-win situation. In other words, I'm saying the blocks have a lot of pluses to them. They don't burn. They're, in other words, fire retardant. They're, you know, there's just a lot of pluses. So I want to see, you know, if DHHL would do something like that. I think there's some people on Maui that are trying to get land to do that. In other words, there's a lot of sugar land over here that's opened up. And so there's the private sector looking for commercial applications there. But to me, DHHL sits on because they are actually into home building and providing for beneficiaries a place. They should be involved in this also. I'm just saying, I haven't heard too much about it as far as something that DHHL has been vocal about. And I would like to know if some of the planners here have approached any kind of scenario where this becomes an important alternative.
Okay.
So Roy, just to answer your question, well, at least for my own part, no, we haven't been approached specifically regarding hemp production. But from your comments, I glean a couple of policy directions that you might be implying. One is that in addition to food production, DHHL should also consider cultivation of other types of materials. You specifically mentioned hemp, but that's one thing I gleaned. The other thing is I gleaned related to housing is that DHHL should consider alternative types of building materials that might help to lower the cost of construction, such as hemp blocks or other types of materials. So those are some of the things I gleaned from your comments.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you, Roy. Cindy, go ahead. Oh, sorry, Roy, did I cut you off?
I just wanted to know if there's going to be a answer to this question.
Come here,
Is it gonna
baby.
I think, well, the department doesn't really research specific types of crops. What we do focus on is trying to get beneficiaries onto the land. And I know from the comments we've heard tonight that we need to do that faster and better. But we usually leave it up to the beneficiary to figure out what they want to grow on their land. But I think what you're suggesting, Roy, is that the department look at specific types of crops. Is that what you're suggesting?
I would just like to see them investigate it, because I think it's something that could serve a couple different purposes for DHHL to start addressing homes and agriculture as far as use for their land.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, got it. Okay, Cindy, go ahead.
Yes, mahalo for the research on this metric thing on ag and pastoral. I have a big concern on this because we're dealing with acre land, yeah, and the water is the most important thing. We are struggling with water even in Waimea, some areas up there in the ag and pastoral area. I know Honomu, when they gave it out, there's rivers down that side. I can see a potential in water there. I'm very leery where this ag, Waimea is a good place too, but the water is a big concern in order to grow, to be self-sustainable. and grow commercial crops. I have my reserve on this one. It's just the water and the climate changing on that part of it, because water is life to all, whether it's human or growing crops, you know. But I like this idea. I waited so long for ag land and I'm still waiting. But with what's going on today with the water part, we're having a battle with that at this point. So I don't know how this would fly, you know. Maybe you guys can, I don't know if you guys can add in something about the water issue in here to make us more confident, in other words. Yeah, I like raw land, but I can hold on to raw land in a smaller quantity, but for ag and beyond 1 acre, that is a concern to me. If you guys can come up with adding the water in this mix, how is the water gonna be? You know, thank you.
Good point. Any other guys wanted to comment or had a question?
Yeah, I've got a comment on the food, these metrics here. Shouldn't they be more specific as far as specific targets, quantifiable and measurable? Because if this is a 2040 target, number of ag homestead awards is just pretty vague. Shouldn't it be like 100 ag awards per year over the next 10 years rather than being vague? If it's vague, then when you go and hit the targets, then, well, these aren't really targets because there's nothing to hit. All of these items, all 6 of them. So it should be more specific and measurable with a target that they can achieve. Like you folks, the housing one, right? That one was 500 per year. So shouldn't there be a number here as well of 50 per year, 50 ag per year, 50 pastoral per year, that type of thing as well?
That's a good suggestion. We can go and look at specifying specific targets.
So are these metrics that you folks will hold yourselves to in 2040, or why are we reviewing these metrics?
These are the metrics that we are proposing to hold ourselves to, yes.
Okay, then that is like 101 is it should be specific, measurable, and quantifiable. If they're really vague like this, you guys are going to look like kings in 2040.
I think the reason why we didn't assign numbers at this point in time is we wanted feedback from folks about just the measure itself. And as we go back and we get validation from folks that participate in the consultation that these are good metrics for us to utilize going forward, then we can add specific targets to it.
Yeah, I think the targets, the actual targets would be more helpful. Otherwise, it's not helpful to review targets like this. I just want to make sure that, you know, you folks are holding yourselves accountable to things. And if they're really vague targets like this, you guys are going to look great. So really, we need you folks to be stewards of this Hawaiian land and ensure you folks are, you know, doing a good job of allocating it out to people and holding yourselves accountable and making sure that these are getting out there, because it's not getting out there right now. And these metrics, it's just something you shouldn't even be putting in front of us. It should have numbers.
Okay, noted. Ron, looks like you got your hand up. You have the last comment of the night since we're at 8 o'clock.
Okay, you know, on this island, on East Hawaii, we have two farmer, Maku and Chokapaneva farmers areas, yeah. Now, of those, they've been there a long time, have you folks ever reviewed how many of these farmers are actually in production as a percent? You know, if there's 100 lots, 50 of them are raising crops based on these standards you're asking. Have any research have been done so far? And I don't know if the other islands have these ag lots like we do on this island. I was just curious, how successful have they been all these years of raising crops? That's my question. Have you reviewed and talked to the farmers? You know, one of the biggest issues I think we have is access to capital, yeah? Because most of these farmers cannot borrow money based on leased lands. So a lot of them are not farming, because they do have a CTAR extension agent to help them do farm plans, yeah? But if they don't have the capital, how can they, farm? Because you don't plant something today and get revenue the next day. It takes years, yeah, in certain crops. So most of them, if they grow anything, they have a day job, you know. And for Honomu, I've been through a lot of their meetings. One of the problems that I see is I don't think a lot of them are really interested in farming, but they just want a piece of property so they can pass it on to the next generation. So they might be the farmers. I don't know. My wife has 5 brothers and a sister. And we had a niece stay with us while she was going to the University of Hilo. And she loved this island. And she said, I wish I could afford to come back to Hilo. So we said, go ask your grandpa and ask her to be put on his list for ag. So she went back and asked grandpa, since he was too old to farm and he doesn't want to come to the Big Island. So she's now on the wait list for ag as a beneficiary. So, and I wonder how many of these people on the ag list. The same thing, because my wife we're on a homestead now, but she's number 1008 on the ag list. So we're going to assign, on her passing to one of our 3 children. And I wonder how many people on the wait list, that's their intent, not to farm, but to actually pass on to the next generation a piece of land, because most of us have more than 1 child here. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know the metric
That's all I have to
if
say.
that's part of the survey for the last one, but Malachi just pulled up the slide that Melissa presented. So there was a survey done in 2020 by DHHL. 80% of the guys on the wait list for ag lots indicated they would want to farm.
Yeah.
And then 20% or so of the existing lessees on ag lots aren't farming right now. We're in 2020. So that hopefully the answer is 20%.
Yeah, but I'm just asking, you already got farm lots. Do they match up to these figures? That's my question. Saying one thing on a survey is different from actually doing it. Is what I'm.
Yeah.
So and I'm concerned that you might be putting a lot of effort into this, but it's not going to be very successful. I think most people, they want a place to live. If they can get a ag lot, they'll do it, right? Doesn't cost them anything. And like for my wife, she feels that we got 3 kids. One of them going to have this home, and the hopefully the other one would get her ag lot sometime in the future for that child and their family. So that's all I had to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are past 8 o'clock. I apologize for that. Took a little over. Appreciate everybody staying through with us. We did have a couple more slides. You've seen this one already. That's upcoming meetings. Nothing to cover there. You've seen that. Next one is just a slide hyping the Conveo site, which is the open house website. So please go get that. We had the links posted in a chat all over the place. And that next slide is a point of contact. You guys probably have this, or you can find this on the website also. And that was the last slide for tonight. So with that, our team, we just want to thank you guys. This was a great discussion tonight. Appreciate all the comments that we got and all the feedback. Stay safe and good night.
Hello, everyone. Take care.